Don't mind me, I'm just going to lean over and just nibble. Just have a little nibble here. Dude.
Hi folks, welcome back to Ponderosa Garden Adventures. I'm Sharon.
I'm Mark.
And today we're going to talk about garden villains. So you've done everything right. You've got your bed ready, you've amended the soil, you've grown your seeds, you've planted your starts, and you've fertilized. Everything's going great. And then suddenly you come out one day and something's gone, something's eaten, something's dying. And it's usually because of a garden villain. And so we're going to go through the creepy, the crawly, and the furry garden villains today. And then we'll catch up with you at the end for some conclusions.
It's hard to think of rabbits as a villain because they are so cute. I will show you. You can see we have video of them eating, just standing there on their hind legs, nibbling away at our crops, our
like
flowers.
It's their salad bar.
Exactly. And they get, yes, they're very bold. They will, and so, but one thing is they're easy to thwart. That if we make it difficult and we plant something that's easier for them to get to, they will definitely go to the ones that are easier to get to. And sadly to say, over the course of the summer, wild predators like hawks, raptors, and coyotes and bobcats and mountain lions tend to thin out the herd for us. So that's one we haven't had to deal with other than putting up barriers. Now, a big problem we have had is with moles and gophers, and this is related to some of the creepies. So we'll get to that in a few minutes. But basically that has always been, and still is, one of our biggest problems is moles. Moles are burrowing rodents, and they leave big, huge piles. They like to eat the roots of plants. They burrow around the roots of plants and disturb it. And anywhere you've got mulch, they will disturb it and so forth. But it turns out there's something that attracts the moles that we didn't know about, and that is grubs. So if you see our video on nematodes, we talk about that, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Right.
So
There's some things you can do also to discourage the moles. There are things they don't like. They don't like strong smells, so they don't like onions. They don't like the alliums. They don't like garlic. They don't like lavender and rosemary and those things. They just don't like those strong smells. So what we've done in the past, for example, we've grown green onions as a border around our planting beds to try to discourage them. And it's worked fairly well. So there's some passive things like that you can do to discourage them.
So there was two things that were effective in getting rid of the moles, or at least
reducing
the population. Were, number one, a sonic device that you bury underground. It makes a beeping noise that they don't like. It took a few months before they left, and they kind of all congregated at a corner, but eventually they did leave. But the main thing was we found out what they were coming for were the grubs. So once we dealt with the grub issue, that also kept the population down. We also have other kinds of rodents, mice and rats and things like that, and we just use basic pest control methods for them.
And we also do things like we will cover the raised beds with netting or other deterrents to try to make it harder for them to get through anyway.
But sometimes, even with lots of several layers of barriers, as you can see in this video right here, here's a mouse in the corn patch earlier this summer, and they ate entire ears of corn. We didn't get any ears off this crop. Yeah. And here you can see them slithering in and out of there. So even the best of barriers sometimes don't work. So, of course, other furry, well, they aren't really furry. These, I guess, birds are one other kind of thing. We really don't do anything to discourage birds because they're
we love the birds. You see lots of our shorts. We feature the hummingbirds and the sparrows and the eagles and things. So we do love birds in our garden. But the problem comes when we're planting seeds and they're eating the seeds before they have a chance to germinate. And also in our fruit trees especially, we have to net the fruit trees in order to keep the birds from taking the crop before we get to harvest it.
So our approach there is to put up a barrier, put up bird netting either over the seeds or over the fruit tree to keep the birds out. And also we have several bird feeders
Right.
with bird seeds in them that kind of distract them and keep them from...
Hopefully keep them full.
Hopefully. All right, so that pretty much does it for the furry. As obviously for the pets, we just put up fences and stuff and we try and train them. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's really a matter of, keeping an eye on them, trying to discourage them with behaviors like going into the planting beds and things like that. And we use raised beds, which help with that as well.
Yeah, I think digging is one of the main issues, and we've found several strategies to discourage that.
Yep.
All right. So basically it comes down to grubs, slugs and snails, and caterpillars. I know caterpillars are more like an insect, but basically things that crawl and on our things. It turns out grubs is our nemesis. That is the thing that is the most destructive, and it also attracts moles, so it's like a double whammy.
Right. So we've addressed them in learning about the grubs, and that we've addressed that by using beneficial nematodes. And we're not going to go too deep into that. We've got a whole video that talks about that. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, check out our nematode video. And the thing is to make sure, be aware to treat your soil, use whatever positive beneficials you can. We garden organically. We don't like to, we try not to, hurt those things in our ecosystem, but sometimes it's your tomato or it's the hornworm, and I'm sorry, but the hornworm has to go. So.
Right. So for the solution for the grubs with the nematodes, and you will know them. You will know if you have them when you dig in the ground around the plant. You will see these gross.
They look like a giant white, thick worm. And we don't have chickens, but if you have chickens and you have grubs, the chickens apparently love to eat the grubs, but we don't have chickens yet.
Chickens. So we use nematodes. And same thing with, what slugs and snails look like. Almost everyone has to deal with slugs and snails. You know what those look like.
Right.
I kind of just throw those away. Just get rid of them.
They come it's a seasonal thing. They come when the moisture's there. They like those damp spaces. And, there's, organic products you can use.
Diatomaceous earth,
yes,
for example, is an organic solution for slugs and snails. And also after a rainstorm, I come out and I just kind of tidy them up and I throw them.
Yeah. There's also, there's the old solutions where you put, a pie tin or a dish and you kind of bury it a little bit in the dirt so that they can crawl in. You put a little of flat beer in there and they crawl in, and then in the morning you just collect them. That works for slugs and snails, and you'll also probably catch some earwigs in that same type of trap.
And that's a crawly. One more creepy is caterpillars, and that is caterpillars, hornworms especially, can be very destructive. We've had a hornworm eat an entire tomato plants, but they're very seasonal. They quickly turn into butterflies or moths, and so you just got to keep an eye on them for a few weeks during the spring. But they are very destructive. The only strategy we use there is just to look at each plant and pick them off and get rid of them. It's kind of gross. Gardening can be gross at times, so this is one of the things you have to deal with, the creepy crawlies. And so I like to wear gloves. One little tip.
I'm not a bug smasher. But.
So let's talk about the crawlies. Leave those to the last. We have lots of them. There's the standard ones that probably everyone deals with: earwigs, aphids, grasshoppers, and so forth. One in particular that we really
dislike.
Really dislike and get really frustrated with is the June beetle. And now they're called June beetles, but they actually are here from June all the way through September.
They're those green iridescent beetles that fly around when the weather gets warmer. They make a buzzing sound. They can't see very well, so they fly right at you. They're really unpleasant.
They burrow underground and they lay eggs that hatch into grubs. So you see the June beetle, the grubs, the moles are all interrelated.
Right. We're kind of talking about the whole life cycle and ecosystem going on in your garden. And one thing to mention is that if you have all these things, you're doing something right generally, because it means that you've got an environment that is attractive to them, right? They want what you have. Your plants are healthy and thriving, and so they're here to get those. So that's a good thing. But we want to make sure that we can manage as best we can so that we get to benefit from some of those crops as well.
And some of them are predators that eat other pests, and some are food for other predators that they need. So we always try to use organic and natural solutions just to keep the life cycle going and just to keep them off of our plants.
Right. For example, our apple tree will get aphids, our roses will get aphids, and there's a couple things you can do. You can plant a trap crop. Coreopsis is a host plant for aphids. You can plant those nearby. You can also use ladybugs, which is a pleasant thing to release into your garden, and the ladybugs will eat the aphids. So as long as there's food for the ladybugs, they'll stick around in your garden.
All right, another pest that is really common here in our zone is the white cabbage butterfly. And this is a small white butterfly, about 2 to 3 inches, and it's got 1 or 2 little gray or black dots on its wings. They're called cabbage butterflies because they're attracted to anything in the kale family. Kale,
All
cabbage, broccoli, yes, all of those.
Right.
And so since we have lots of those crops in our edible planters, we do get a lot of those. And there's nothing you can do with those rather than catch them and dispose of them.
Right.
Destroy
the problem
them.
is they'll land on those brassicas and they will lay their eggs, and the eggs will turn into caterpillars, and they will eat your brassicas. So and they can really devastate very quickly. They can devastate a plant.
Okay. So one more I'm going to highlight really quickly here because we happen to have some footage of it is the squash bug. We started noticing these just in the past year, probably because
when we planted the pumpkins in the back, because they like to attack pumpkins and squash and sometimes some of the brassicas, I think. Yeah,
we started to notice these bright red orange bugs about 1 inch or 2. Just like with everything in gardening, it's an ongoing, evolving process. Once you deal with one villain, you may eradicate one villain. Another one will move in because they're opportunistic, and they'll move in where the other one used to be, or vice versa.
They can be seasonal, so you'll deal with certain things certain times of year. Like, for example, the earwigs come after the rains. They like the moisture and the wet, and so you'll deal with those at different times of the year. And just in closing, the main lesson is to keep an eye on your plants and pay attention for the signs of these garden villains so that you can take some proactive approach. And they're not all villains. They all have their part. They're all part of the ecosystem. There's garden heroes as well. We're going to do a video coming up soon on garden heroes and do the flip side of this as well. So thanks for joining us today here on Ponderosa Garden Adventures. We are happy to bring these videos to you. We hope that you learned something about garden villains, and maybe we'll be able to recognize some in your garden.
Leave a comment below. Let us know what villains you're dealing with and how you're dealing with them. And also, this would be a good time to subscribe if you haven't already.
All right. If you hit the notification bell, you'll get notified anytime we post a new video. And we love to hear from you guys. We love to see the comments in the chat. So, because we're very passionate about gardening, and we love to talk about it anytime we can.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time on Ponderosa Garden Adventures.